Donald Trump, coming back as the 47th President of the United States, introduces a new level of uncertainty in an already fractured world order. It's time to now peek into the future and try and get a sense of what a second Trump presidency could mean for India and the rest of the world. And for this, I'm joined from New York, live and exclusive, by Ian Bremmer, one of the world's top risk gurus, whose job it is to try and probabilistically understand what is most likely to happen next and why. And at a time of so much uncertainty, Ian Bremmer is amongst the best people to be speaking to. Mr. Bremmer, welcome back, and thank you for joining us on the NewsTrack at a time when there's so much change in your country. You said when we spoke last before the elections that intellectually you thought that Donald Trump was going to come back to power, even though you wouldn't personally want him to. Explain to everyone watching at this moment, for the United States, internally, what do you expect the second Trump presidency to do, which would be different from what the world and America has seen during the first Trump presidency?
Well, the first point is that this was a dramatic win. It was the popular vote, not just the electoral vote. So you saw Kamala Harris conceding on the following day, everyone in the United States recognizing that Trump did win a free and fair election. Yes, there was some external interference, particularly from Russia. Yes, there were some internal concerns with ballot boxes, but nothing significant. So the election itself is done. It was held to a gold standard, and Trump has won. Now, this is an administration that comes to power on the back of dozens of convictions against Donald Trump. So the first point, what he needs to do very differently from the first time around, is he needs to ensure he has control over the so-called power ministries, the Department of Justice, the IRS, the FBI. He's got to, end all of the cases against him, and he wants to make sure that no such cases could ever be launched in the future by anybody else. So there will be, I think, a politicization, even a weaponization of those institutions that could have some impact on rule of law, and it might be used, and this will be careful to watch, against some of his own internal enemies. A very important point, and something I think that concerns a lot of the Democrats that will be leaving power over the coming weeks. A second major point is that we've already seen some big wars open around the world. You and I talk about them all the time. And Trump has promised to end them. He says he's going to end the war between Russia and Ukraine in one day, and doesn't even need to wait until he's president, can do it in the lame duck. That deeply concerns NATO allies because they worry that he's not going to coordinate with them. It deeply concerns President Zelensky, who has already reached out to Trump in his first 24 hours to say, hey, are we good? I really want to work with you. But of course, he's very concerned he's going to face pressure to end the war where it is right now and lose that territory. In the Middle East, of course, Trump's first trip as president when he won back in 2016 was to Saudi Arabia and then to Israel. Those leaders have remained his and his family's biggest friends, supporters from around the world in the 4 years that they've been out of power. Wouldn't surprise me if Trump goes back, certainly promoting Israel very strongly, even saying that they should be going harder against Iran, against the nuclear facilities, for example. That's very important to watch. Also important to watch how Iran responds to all of this. So the context where Trump becomes president here, both domestically and internationally, so much more volatile, so much more uncertain, so much more dangerous than it was in 2017.
One of the problems Donald Trump had during his first term was that the people he appointed in important positions didn't necessarily fully align with his agenda. That is likely to change during his second presidency. Who are the key personalities you are looking out to most carefully who are likely to feature in important ranks in the second Trump presidency?
Well, you're absolutely right that he hired a lot of adults, people that were acceptable to the Republican establishment. that also acted as buffers, even brakes, on some of the policies that he would have wanted to implement. He certainly will not do that this time around, and that's particularly true for the Attorney General, for example. Bill Barr, who is very conservative but also very independent-minded in how he thinks about the country and rule of law, you would never see someone like that reappointed in a Trump administration this time around. So I think those positions, the question will be how competent they are, and if they're really incompetent, they might not get approved by Senate, though his big win makes it easier, makes the bar on that a little bit lower. But more broadly, you're going to see loyalists. And some of those loyalists, I think, are people we would broadly see as capable in their jobs. Some of them are not. Now, I think that Treasury, for example, will be a loyalist, a strong loyalist, but from Wall Street. The names I'm hearing, Howard Lutnick, who has been very involved in the campaign, first said, I just want to help you get elected, but as he's gotten closer to Trump, now wants a position of power. He's very interested. I also hear people like John Paulson, the hedge fund owner, other folks like that that have given a lot to Trump and that he sees as friends and colleagues. Linda McMahon, longtime friend of Trump, head of the World Wrestling Federation, also very involved in the campaign, seems to want to be Secretary of Commerce. For state, which of course India will be very interested in, some of the names that are presently floated, Bill Hagerty, the senator from Tennessee, the former ambassador to Japan. I think he would be considered the more practical, sort of traditional appointee, but also someone like Rick Grinnell, who had been ambassador to Germany, was the acting National Intelligence Council chair, and is quite close and quite friendly to Trump. Defense, Tom Cotton, the senator from Arkansas, someone that I hear an awful lot from the inner Trump circle. But, you know, as you know, Rahul, President Trump is going to make these decisions himself at the last minute. He will not be second-guessed by other people, and he's going to feel much more unconstrained in how he does that because his message and his undisciplined campaign won and won big. So he thinks he doesn't need a lot of advice from people around him, that they're telling him to act like an adult, and he shouldn't have to listen to them. And that we saw that in the vice presidential appointment. Very different here. Mike Pence was the responsible adult figure that everyone was comfortable with. J.D. Vance is the guy who's the friend of Donald Trump Jr., who Trump liked personally, and who is the id. He's the guy that really channels the Trump message. And anyone that thinks, oh, J.D. is going to be like Dick Cheney, he's going to run the administration, make the appointees. No, he's not. Trump doesn't want anyone to take all of the limelight except Trump. And if he saw Vance starting to do that, he would cut Vance down to size. So what you'll see is a number of different competing power circles around Trump, but Trump is in charge, and Trump will make decisions on the areas that are important to him. And the reason why you might get someone like Hagerty, who is much more acceptable at state, is because, frankly, on most foreign policy issues, Trump doesn't care all that much. It's not his personal priority. And why Attorney General will be such a strong loyalist is that is a very high priority for President-elect Trump going forward.